This happened yesterday, after I finished the night shift at around 3 a.m. I work at a store of a big fast food chain to pay for my university. Our staff changes frequently because a lot of students and migrants work at our place. So, you don't get to know each other very well. Everybody has their own social life, and it is very, very rare for coworkers to establish friendships outside working hours. Still, you know the people on your shift, and the night shift has particularly few workers. One of my coworkers, Jazir, started to get interested in me. Not that I noticed. I am young and dumb, like being friendly and, important for later, have a hard time saying no. In December 2019, our store threw a Christmas party at a pub. I went and had a great time, but I also made plans for later that night. Because of that, I wanted to leave early, which made Jazir also want to leave early despite the fact he neither needed nor planned it beforehand, which made me uncomfortable. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to get to the train station and I did, so I couldn't say no and just let him tag along. When we arrived at the train station, it came to light there was no train he could take to get home. None. He did not check beforehand. He did not ask me, and he just wanted to tag along with me. Super uncomfortable. Instead of taking the train to the main station, he got into my train and only got out when I insisted he change trains at another big station. But oh boy, that was not the train in reference to the title of this story. In January 2020, Jazir asked me out for coffee and I agreed. I thought, he just wants friends. He doesn't have any and can only rely on his coworkers. If something happens, I can just nope out. And so I went. First it was okay-ish. We mostly talked about work-related stuff, because we don't share any hobbies. We are not the same age, and we don't have the same mother tongue. Jazir didn't like talking about work. He did, however, start talking about how different I was from other coworkers, how nice of a person I am, and how good my charisma is. Then he asked if we could get to know each other better. I genuinely didn't want to, and still don't. Jazir is not my type. Neither as a person, nor from his looks. Especially his looks, even if I sound superficial. While I am in my early 20s, Jazir is at least in his early 30s. I have no problem with age gaps, a story for another subreddit, but I am not attracted to men that dress like teenagers. Instead of telling Jazir a straight no, I told him I was not interested in having a boyfriend. He didn't take that seriously and told me I would change my mind. I told him I wouldn't. He, again, was not really on board with that opinion, so I elaborated my opinion 3 times in German and 1 time in English to get it very clear. He always changes to English if he does not get something or thinks he misunderstood, even if he clearly heard it and just does not like it. I mean, obviously my opinion is gonna change if I explain it in English rather than German. We left the conversation with him still not convinced and me being really not interested in a second meeting. He eventually gave up soon after, and I foolishly assumed I was free. But whenever he came back to the workplace to place an order, he would ask me out to eat something. And every time I would postpone whatever I said the last time, because of finals, because of travel, because of anything I could get my hands on. Then came COVID-19 that hit Germany in March, and I didn't see him anymore. I blocked him on social media in April, and hoped that was the last thing to happen. But again, that was not the case. Today I finished my shift at 3 a.m., and left with my female and very Asian coworker, Wei, to catch the next train. We take different trains, so we decided to wait in the main lobby until I needed to go to my platform. In that time, Jazir appeared. He just finished his shift and was on his way home. Wei asked him which train he needed to get on, but Jazir replied that he was walking home. While the conversation went on, I got closer to Wei to get some space between me and Jazir. Wei did not grasp how uncomfortable I was in this situation, and she just walked away. What did Jazir do? He placed himself between me and Wei, right in my vision line. Every fiber in my body felt how he barged into my personal space. I decided I could not take a private conversation with him and said, "Oh look, I need to go to my platform," to end it, but Jazir followed me. Through the main lobby, through the train station, into the elevator, and into the train. I was internally screaming and walked through the train until I saw another passenger. I sat down in the row of seats next to me, and Jazir followed. As if every bit of luck had just left me, the other passenger moved seats and went away, so I was back alone. Jazir talked, and I showed clear signs of not wanting to continue the conversation. I hoped he would leave before the train departed, but he didn't. Mind you, the train goes in the opposite direction of his house and is 1 hour walking distance to my workplace. There is no way in hell this man can get anything out of taking that train except following me and continuing the conversation. I was freaked out and told him in English he was acting very weird. Maybe I should have used a different word, but English is not my first language, and at that point I only thought about escaping. I could not let him see my station, or he could easily find my home. I don't live in a rural area, but at 3 a.m. there is nobody on the streets, so him following me home was terrifying. I thought about getting off a station earlier, but then I would need to get a cab, for which I did not have cash on me, or I needed to walk the rest and he could still follow. I decided to get up at the next station, let him get out of the train first, and then just stay inside while the doors close. Fortunately, it worked, but only after telling him clearly this was not my station. I would not get out, and he would not get back in. I even held my hand out to stop him from coming back. He stayed outside after the conductor shouted at us to let the door close. So let's rewind. He is way older than me, but does not get the concept of me not wanting to be in a relationship with him. Whenever he does not like an answer, he switches to English, because it just might be a misunderstanding. He followed me 2 times into my train and almost home, without even thinking about how creepy that behavior is. So, Jazir, let's not meet again. The following experience happened to me a few years ago when I was on the train home from school. It was around 10 p.m. at night, as I had stayed back in a public library to study. One thing you should know is that my train line is particularly dodgy, and you can meet some truly weird people on the train when it's late. When I got onto my carriage that night, it was particularly empty, apart from 3 women sitting on the opposite end of the carriage. I sat down and plugged my earphones in to watch YouTube. My train ride usually takes around 45 minutes. About 3 stops into the train ride, and the only other person who had gotten onto my carriage at the time was a man who was wearing construction clothes. He sat near the 3 women, so I assumed he knew them. I turned my attention back to my video. A few minutes later, I noticed that the 3 women who were sitting on the opposite side of my carriage had moved to my side. I didn't really think much of it as I was engrossed in the video I was watching. That's when I noticed someone take a seat opposite me. It was the man who had gotten on earlier. He asked me my name, but he was giving me a weird vibe, so I pretended like I couldn't hear him. I had my earphones in after all. He then proceeded to tap my knee to gain my attention. There was no use ignoring him, so I removed my earphones and looked at him. He was a big guy, probably around early 40s, and he was clean-shaven. He asked me my name, to which I gave him a fake name. He then asked me how old I was. I was in my school uniform at the time, so I told him. He reached out his hand, introduced himself. Not wanting to be rude, I extended my own hand to shake his hand. This is when things started to get weird. His handshake was super weird. His grip was abnormally tight, and he seems to pull my hand towards he as he shook it. I quickly withdrew my hand. He then asked me if I had a girlfriend, as he thought I was quite attractive. Alarm bells began to ring in my head, and glanced over at the 3 women who refused to even look over at my direction. Seeing as they would be no help, I would just have to look out for myself. He then took out his phone and started showing me a picture of a girl who seemed to look around my age. He then asked me if I thought she was beautiful. Again, not wanting to be rude, I simply nodded and said that she was. He then asked me if I would be interested in marrying her. I just started laughing as I thought he was just joking around, but his eyes were dead serious and he just glared at me. He repeated his question, to which I responded that I did not know her and that it was inappropriate. He suggested that I give him my number so that he could arrange for us to meet. This seriously creeped me out, and I politely declined, stating that I was busy with school and that I wasn't looking to get into a relationship. As I said this, the train was coming to a halt at a station. I was still 3 stops away from mine, but I decided that it was time for me to get out of this situation. I apologized that this was my stop and that it was nice to meet him. As I got up to leave, he extended his hand for a handshake and thanked me for talking to him. I didn't want to shake his hand, but I did not want to trigger him, so I reached out my hand. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand and pulled it towards him. His eyes were full of anger. He then asked, "What, you don't want to fuck my daughter? I will break you." I quickly broke the grip and left the carriage. As it was nighttime, there were always police officers patrolling the platforms. I rushed towards one of the officers and told him everything that happened. I then described his clothing and which carriage he was sitting on. While waiting for the next train, the same officer came up to me and told me that officers had picked him up 2 stations down and thanked me for letting him know. Although the officer asked for my contact info, I was never notified as to what happened to him. But wanting, I know for sure, creepy guy on the train, I definitely never want to meet you again.